right? Just trying to get a record function together. Right, so lesson 14 focuses on incident, accident investigation, recording and reporting. And I think it's really the second to last lesson, right? Because you only have 15 PowerPoints anyway. So it still is July, right? The 18th of July. And, so I guess you can take it slow, which is why I think these sessions were really cut to be just about 45 minutes, right? I think we do have to kind of delay it a bit till September to see what's going on with the exam. At least a written exam anyway, right? So for the folks that have, and again, these things normally eventually end up on YouTube anyway, right? So the folks who I have on, just to let you know, I guess it could spread the message around, but I think the message would have gotten out already that we have been saying the dates, right? I think somebody who doesn't know the date would be somebody who is not, I guess, taking part in the sessions, right? So the final submission for your project is the 31st of July, and that's the final. I did mention all of this in the month of July. We had, first of all, sort of like my deadline, and I kept stressing that, but I was still a deadline for drafts, and we'll still be given feedback anyway, right? So we had 10 persons that submitted. I think possibly everybody here, well, it's 4 persons or 5 persons we have on, counting myself. So I think you all may be the 5, right? It looks that way. I have Anoop, I have Chanel, Ariane, Rodan, Shannon, right? So we do have these 5 projects, but there's another 5. So we had 10 submissions in all. And again, so letting you all know, I had mentioned these things before, but we did not have the dates. But I think we said it last week too. So the final deadline will be on the 31st, right, of July. So what you can do, still if you got back your project and you got a little feedback on it, right, remember you could look at your draft and look at the guidance and try to do like a matchup as to what the guidance say to what you have written, right? Once I think you made that, because that's what I do. I mean, as course providers, we cannot physically do a project for you. So, I mean, for those of us, everybody here who have gotten feedback before, you would have probably gotten like an example, some line underlined, and you would have gotten back the requirement that what would have been missing anyway, right? So you can still do that. I think by now, everybody have an idea of what you're doing, comparing the project back to the guidelines. And so you can still do that and try to submit it now. Well, of course, not try to submit it, but submit it by the 31st, so you can do it before. I think what we will do, I told Janet yesterday anyway that so we'll probably give the 10 of you all a call on that. And the final one, which I don't expect because you have 2 weeks again. I suppose if you want, you could still hit a draft anywhere there. But the final one, what you can do is actually mark the word final on it. And the other thing is that we got your student numbers, right? So take a note of that if you all have any paper and pen around. So we can give you these numbers next week when the office is open. I got it yesterday, in fact, right? So we did register with the monies that you all paid. We did register you all for the NG2 exam, and the numbers were generated anyway. So I think some of you all know that those numbers are missing on your project, the student numbers. So Janet doesn't have it, you know, way down in Lucero side there. We'll probably have it in the office. I know it's printed and it's up in the office. So we can probably give you that, not probably, but we would give you that next week. So you can insert that number into your project, thereby making it your final project anyway, right? Still remember that within now and the 31st is still some days. So if you want to hit my draft, still, that's still okay. But after the 31st, that is basically submission day, right? Once you send me those things, I'll be uploading it. And that is submission day anyway, right? Any questions on that? Because as I get into the lesson, I might not have time to come back to that. Any questions on that there? So anyway, I guess you could ask the questions as the sessions go, right? All right, so nonetheless, there's no questions there as yet anyway. So I'm gonna get into the lesson, right? Oh, by the way, I mean, I did mention 10, just in case you are here, but I don't think so. I just saw the persons who are online. But again, if you know anybody, I know some people know other students in class who haven't submitted yet. Can they still register and submit? The answer is yes, but they have until I think the 24th. I mean, I guess our internal deadline would have gone already, but NEBOSH, would still, I guess, it's kind of funny to say because remember you have to pay us the money first for us to pay NEBOSH the money, right? But yes, the answer is yes. I suppose on this week you can still register if there's anybody out there who changed their mind and they wanted to submit. Yes, you can still come in, I guess, early in the week and get those fees in so we could register you, right? I think the school's deadline is around the 24th of June, meaning that we cannot register anybody else after that day. Once the registration period closes, that would be it. But the 10 of you, and I think the 6 of you here, are the ones that would have registered and, well, paid, and because of that, you would have been registered on the exam already, right? So again, I'll make a little plea if you have any questions asked. If not, I'm going to get into the lesson. All right, so let's go into this. So we have, I'm trying to admit some people there still, right? So we have um, incident and accident investigation recorded and reported. I think what I'll do, because I actually do have something else I wanted to say uh, about the open book exam, right? But I guess I'll probably leave it for about the last 5 or 10 minutes, right? So let's go into this, right? So the objectives of this session to facilitate meaning towards the following themes: the process, and purpose of investigating incidents. And the revision would have been from last week: audit methodology, types of information to gather to review health and safety performance. And from last week, that would have been the active and reactive indicators, right? So you could revise that. I think it's on YouTube as well. But of course, it's in your handout and it's in your book, right? So I'll leave that there. I don't want to spend too much of time on revision, right? So we have, let's get these slides together, right? So the process and purpose of incident or investigated incidents. And I don't think I want to read all of this. I think we can look at the heading and try to kind of decipher it a bit, right? It says, what is the purpose of accident investigation? And a lot of people know the answer for that, right? The purpose of an accident investigation, it's to find the cause, right? You really want to find what was the cause, what happened, and probably why did it happen, right? So to identify the cause, so you find a lot of that here. I guess a really good one is this one: the purpose of an accident investigation, to prevent anything like that happening again, right? So to prevent the chance of recurrence of the of the accident, right? I think the rest of it could be lesser reasons anyway, but the main reason for an accident investigation, to find the cause and to prevent it from happening again. The rest of it is, it makes sense though, but I don't, a lot of people don't focus on these in the everyday world, right? To show management commitment, to help review risk assessments. And this is possibly with what they find, right? If you would have found that because of the accident, even if you had a good risk assessment, you had an accident, it may have been an indicator that something is wrong with the risk assessment, right? So a nice set of reading here, I would probably just highlight those 2 points. You could read all of it and memorize a little bit more of it anyway, right? The last one, it's a legal requirement of RIDDOR. And if you're seeing this for the first time, this is a law that we cover in the 15th lesson, right? But it's a UK law. It stands for the reporting of injuries, diseases, and dangerous occurrence, right? Regulations. So it's a law in the UK. And I think when we do this in lesson 15, the proper thing to say is that it is really implied that you have to do an accident investigation. It's really not a legal requirement, right? The law really never did say investigate all accidents, but it said, if you look at the letters of it, right, the R stands for reported. So when I say implied, it is really implied that you have to do an investigation before you report, right? For the sake of putting something on the report, right? You would not know what to report if you did not investigate. So if you have this handout, I know some of us make notes anyway, a nice thing to do would have put implied here. It is really implied in this law in the UK known as RIDDLE that will cover a lot more in the 15th lesson, right? This is the 14th lesson, of course. So maybe, I want to really just say maybe 3 main reasons for doing an accident investigation: to find the cause, to prevent it from happening again, and the last one, it's a legal requirement really implied under this UK law known as RIDDLE. And the rest of it makes sense as well. It's really commitment of managers and to identify short and long-term corrective actions. But really, I think those are the 3 main ones anyway. Right? This particular slide, types of accidents and incidents. I don't know if you remember the lesson for this, but we had a lesson on this already. Partially, I think that mentioned some of these. I think it was under the reactive indicators of accidents and incidents. And this one really says here that you need to categorize types of accidents and incidents. And really, just to kind of break this down for you, that is really to tell you what has happened, right? Like there could be different types of accidents, like property damage, right? Could have resulted from an accident. So they say that you need to categorize them so you can see what's happening then, right? Minor injuries, if you want to write down those categories, right? Major injuries, fatalities, so that you need to categorize them so it can help you to prioritize a remedy, right? I think something that may be like an accident that could be categorized as major would need more action then or more priority as something like, let's say like a near miss, which is what you have incidents here, right? Incidents did not really result in harm, but it had the potential to. But something that is classed as a major accident or a major injury or God forbid a fatality would require more priority than over, let's say, like a near miss anyway, right? So I don't know if you remember that lesson. It had under the accident ratio triangles. Not that you have to. I think the idea here, if I could grab the marker a bit here, the idea here, if we can tie this into anything, was that if you remember that lesson, there was an accident. Well, it was a triangle. I wouldn't really say there was an accident triangle, but it was a triangle. And the idea here was that these categories we're talking about here can be shown on a triangle. For example, the bottom of the triangle, the largest piece, you'll find here things like more near misses, right? Like if we have more near misses or more incidents, then you'll have like a fatality, right? So that's what they say. You need to categorize them. So this is like a near miss. And you would know then, like based on how severe it is, how to allocate your resources, right? So near misses to the bottom there. This here could be minor injury. This other category, major injury, to the top here will be fatalities, things like death, right? Or what could result in death, right? So if this rings a bell, it's called the accident ratio triangle. And all they're saying here is that you need to kind of put them in groups so you know where to put your monies. Then the ones that are more urgent, right, would need, I guess, greater attention, right? Moving off from that, let me just clean that drawing there. Right. So nothing too much there beside the idea of putting them on a triangle, right? Back to the PowerPoint. Right, so accident investigation procedure, and you know, I mean, there's a lot more to this, but I guess those would be other NEBOSH courses, right? I don't know if you know that we actually, I mean, you must know that we do other NEBOSH courses. So one of our courses, actually this very heading here, accident investigation. And I know we did have one of our students, one of the students in your class actually did it, right? A short course anyway that had um, a project means of assessment, right? So the reason why I'm saying that is because I didn't really see all of the procedures in this course then, right? They just made mention of it. But I'll tell you what I'm talking about. So perhaps you can take a little note on the side so you can get the benefit of that, right? So the efforts of investigation will vary depending on the complexity and severity of the event. A procedure is required to define a methodology to ensure a consistent approach to investigation. A procedure is required to define who is responsible for what during an investigation, right? So the methodology, really and truly, I really wanted to go back here. I mean, like for those of us who know, there's actually an accident investigation procedure, right? Again, it's not mentioned too much here. And, you know, I guess I can mention 2 to 3 steps of the procedure, but I think every company will have their own procedure, right? And I suppose I could try to scribble it, but that does be very difficult with this marker, right? But I guess if you have any paper wrong, like I said, when the heading says that you need a procedure, then procedure is required. That there is really a procedure for accident investigation, right? So I know we have some people that work in the class here, so I'm not too sure. It is really about 7 steps, and I don't want to get into it because, as I mentioned to you, it is another course, but I'll probably get into 3 steps anyway. I did say that. So if you want to get that course done or look at your company procedure, fine, right? But anybody could guess. I guess if I could use some stickmen here, if you have if there was an accident and somebody was injured, right? So this person is on the ground, I guess, right? If somebody was injured, what do you think would be um, step 1, right? What do you think would be step 1 of the procedure to kind of investigate that accident? So this is some sort of vehicle there or something, right? What goes down on step 1? But the slide just said, and you know, and that's what NEBOSH happens anyway, at least in this course. A procedure is required, a procedure is required, but they don't really tell you what the procedure is, right? So I just kind of make the point that it is actually a procedure, even though it's not covered in this course. That you know that this is not something vague, then it shouldn't be something that is left with a question mark, that there is a procedure for accident investigation. So what anybody could come in here and tell us, so an accident just happened here, some vehicle struck a worker, right? What do you think would be step 1 in the procedure? Anybody?
Yeah, get information from co-workers.
Right. Okay, so I'll take, I wouldn't write them as it because the marker will give me some trouble to just, I'll try to boil it down and put it there, right? So I think what you're saying,
Oh,
yeah.
co-workers who witnessed the accident, I mean,
Right.
on that side of the story.
Right, good, right? So anybody else have an idea? No, all of that is actually
So I could use the W's, the what, why, when, who.
okay, I think the W's, I know that is, let me see here. Start may fall within like step 5, and I'm not getting there, but I think you're correct, right? So
What about giving them first aid?
yeah. Say it, Rodan.
What about trying to give them some kind of first aid help?
Right, okay, good, right? So all of that is correct. I think if I could put it in order, Rodan may have been close to first, Shannon may have been about 4, Chanel may have been about 5, right? I'm gonna put it in I guess that kind of order. But the point you're trying to make here, and I see that I don't wanna, well, if it's not in the course, it's not in the course, but I wanna give you the idea that there is a procedure. Chanel points about the who, what, why, when, exactly when you're talking to the witnesses, you know, like what happened, who was involved, etc. Right? Now we do have some of it on the slide. So I would probably advise that you think about that a bit. If you see it in your book, you know, I guess try to come up with some steps for it, right? So step 1 typically may fall within Rodon's point. Step 1, I don't know if you want to write it. I'm just gonna save me this kind of writing it. But step 1 is actually to look after the injured person, right? So step 1 is to look after the injured person. So that may involve, right, some measure of first aid, right? So look after the injured person. You could try to finish that off there, right? Look after the injured person. Step 1. So I've actually found though, like from my work experience, a lot of people don't know that is step 1 though, right? But if you really have somebody on the ground, and an accident would have happened, that would have normally been your step 1. Look after the injured person. Some people believe it's I can form a manager, but that does fall within the step. And for many manager falls within the steps, but it's not step 1, right? Step 1 is really that. So if it means yes, some measure first aid, if I could just put FE, some measure first aid if it was a first aid injury.
Making the area safe.
Right, very good. And that's step 2, right? So step 2, they refer to it as preserving the scene, right? This is supposed to be a P, right? So preserve. You can say them down. I'll give you 3 good steps. So preserve. It'll be easy for you to write it anyway, right? So preserve the scene, and you can look through your book and see if you have it. I'm not too sure if there is a heavy focus on this for exam, but preserve the scene. And then reporting to managers, right? The reporting to managers would be step 3, right? And then the other things you said, like the witnesses and stuff, all of that is within 4, 5, 6 going down the road anyway, right? So step 3 here is really to report. And this report could be a lot, right? Like I said, managers, but that's not really true, right? This report here could actually be to the, this could be even, I guess if you want to take something there, this could actually be contacting the family members and the next of kin of the person. This normally falls here. So as I have report, that is not only meant to be for managers, but reporting to, you know, like, I guess to the manager that, look, someone got struck, but also you have to contact the person's family and let them know, right? So just bear this in mind that there is actually an accident investigation procedure, as you can see from what we're trying to do here. And I've given you 3 of the 7 steps, right? The other steps, of course, I'm sure it's pretty much somewhere in your book, but I know it's covered in some other NEBOSH courses as well, right? Let me just, right, anyway. Right, so see if you're okay with that. And at least like my point in doing this was to let you know that there is actually a procedure. So when they say, like the second point, a procedure is required to define a methodology. Now, this is the methodology here. That's what we do to ensure a consistent approach to the investigation. So in a way, these are the universal 3 steps. And, you know, I mean, once you follow that, you would be consistent anyway, right? So I wouldn't overdo it. I'm pretty sure you can find the rest somewhere in your book, but I'll move on to the other step. I wanted to let you know though that there are steps to an accident investigation, right? So at least you have the idea that that is really something and not something that is vague anyway. Right, so I'm moving on. Just have to clear the drawing and then get the slides to move, right? So. All right, so This whole one again, I could explain this to you. So this is now saying that there is a methodology, and to be simple here for you, what they're trying to say is that the methodology is really the form. If you have seen an accident investigation form, a format is required to guide the investigators, and the format is really the form, right? So I think most of you all have the green textbooks. I know that the forms are normally to the back of the book, around page 600 and something anyway, right? But the idea here is that if there is an accident, the investigators don't go then. And the investigators, by the way, is the HSE or your company's health and safety advisors or inspectors, right? Or let's say inspectors, sorry, officers, right? But when they go then, I mean, they do not go with nothing in their mind then, right? They'll go with a form. And the first thing the form will capture is, for example, like, what was the person's name, right? What department were they in? What is their gender? What is their task, right? And again, even the one that Shannon mentioned, the witnesses and stuff. So a format is required to guide the investigators, yes. Should prompt the investigator to dynamically assess whether or not it's safe to investigate. And again, that's something, if you're a safety, you have to do that. If there's an accident and someone is on the ground, before you go and you administer the first aid and you make the scene safe, you have to make sure that it's safe for you, right? The format should prompt the investigator to determine who was involved, when, where, what, how, and suggest remedies, right? So there is actually an accident investigation form. The format should involve the assessment of the area where the event took place. That is normally on the form as description of the event, assessment of relevant documents associated with the event, for example, risk assessments, training records, maintenance records, inspection records, interviewing of witnesses. The format should highlight investigation resources required, for example, competent persons, camera, tape, measure, notepad, pen, required PPE, right? So if I could just slow down here a bit, I think this could be a question. I mean, I think there are two questions. I've seen these two things asked before. Typically, you know, like if you were doing an accident investigation, what would be the documents would you be looking at? And I think that's an easy question because it could make up 8 documents, right? What would be documents would be looking at? Risk assessments, training records, maintenance records, the person's let's say employment file, right? If there's an accident and they could pull somebody's application, but I think like their HR file, and you can probably see if they had any accidents before, right? So I really wish I could have done more of that, but I suppose you get it. If you can think of 8 documents, someone doing an investigation could actually look at, right? I mean, I would probably put in things like JSAs and some really creative ones, like maybe the person's disciplinary action, right? Like disciplinary action taken against an employee, like that record, the person's performance appraisals. Again, if you're writing, you'll more than make up 8 because it already have 4 there already, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I just give you 3, right? So like JSAs, the person's disciplinary record, the person's performance appraisals, right? That may show then, like the disciplinary record may show that the employee who had the accident was, I guess I'll say it in Trinidad version, right? Was a known troublemaker, right? The person didn't need to follow rules and whatever have you, right? So that by itself is a question. Please take a note of that. And I think this one to the bottom here could also be a question. I did see this. I mean, I did see both of them. This one came with the same heading, like what would be the resources that should be provided for someone taking part in an accident investigation? Like what resources would they need, right? So if you look here, you'll see some of the resources: a camera, a tape, right? A tape measure, but of course it could have to be caution tape, notepad, pen. They also need PPE or RPE based on where they have to go. right? It was 6 marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I don't know if you want to come in and say anything else there. I did mention caution tape though. I think I may just sell out all the answers, but like a nice thing to have as well. If you want to add to this, some resources that is required, a nice, well, I can probably shout about 3. Some nice things to have would be like a clipboard, right? It sounds very simple. A clipboard, right? I know they mentioned the notepad there, but the clipboard is really to give the witnesses sheets of paper, and you give the witnesses the clipboard, and most investigators, they would let the witness write their own account, right? A lot of people are more comfortable with that. You give them the clipboard and pen and paper and let them write, so that no one could accuse you then of like, how they say, badgering the witness or putting words in the witness's mouth and asking them, did they see? Just give them the pen and paper and let them write. So something as simple as that could go a long way, right, in an accident investigation, right? Uh,
So in
yeah,
reality, most people don't like to write what it is they see. They prefer to talk it,
I've actually found it to be the other way around. I've actually found that to be the other way around.
In my experience, most times they don't want to write.
In my experience, they would prefer to write as opposed to talk, right? They prefer just take this pen and paper and notepad and go in a corner somewhere and write it. The only thing I've seen is that some people say that, their spelling is off, but I think we all know the rule about spelling. Once I can make out the word, it's okay, right? This spelling could be off, but a lot of people, a lot of companies use that approach of the notepad, because it's free of intimidation, and it's free of the person being coerced then to say anything, right? And I kind of pose it to say that what I have done is actually asked, right? And I've actually gotten, I think I've probably gotten everybody. I don't think there's anybody who didn't do it. We asked the witnesses, once they write, if they could sign. And some of them, I really don't think I've heard about witnesses not willing to sign. But in my experience, all witnesses normally sign at the end of their statement. And what that does, having written it down, I think as opposed to words, is that the person cannot change anything in it, because they would have written it down and signed it. Once they signed it, if that was to end up in court, let's say it was an accident, somebody died, and the industrial court was investigated, once they would have written that freely without somebody prompting them, and they signed it, that statement could be submitted for evidence in court anyway, right? So, I know that that companies like, the bigger ones, right, they are crazy about that technique anyway, right? Sometimes overusing it, like everything for them is right, everything for them is right. There was a company like that, which I wouldn't call, but I think you all know who we're talking about, right? But everything was just to write, once it happens, pen and paper, right? Because they know, or they had known the value of, I guess, trying to defend themselves in matters pertaining to the court, right? So that's one. I said I was going to shout about 3 other resources. So you have a note, sorry, not a notepad, but the clipboard and paper and stuff, right? Another one that is a good one, and I don't think you could come up with one for yourself, is actually a tweezer, a sample bag, like a Ziploc bag, and some form of cotton, right? Or cotton swabs then, right? The reason for that is pieces of evidence like metal bolts, pieces of evidence like a busted harness, or strings or whatever have you, pieces of evidence even like oil on the ground, or God forbid, blood, could be swabbed then, right? Including oil. I mentioned oil there, different types of oil. And then the oils could be analyzed to say, like where it came from, if it was hydraulic oil or transmission oil or somebody brought oil from home and sabotage an operation, right? Again, companies, like they want to try not to mention all the time, companies like them, and I think including places like Korea and stuff, they can do oil analysis, right? Kaizen does do oil analysis, so they can actually tell you if you see oil on the ground or oil next to a machine, you can, I mean, most of the times they're able to identify that this is machine oil or, you know, oil, transmission oil. But if it's some strange looking oil, you can probably swab it a bit, take a sample of it and send that to the labs and they could analyze that anyway, right? Anybody want to end off with that one? Like what would be, I know I said 6 and I couldn't have come for more than 6 marks. What is 6 resources like a investigator would need? So we mentioned camera, tape measure, notepad, pen, PPE, and that could be a lot in itself, and RPE. Then we added to that the clipboard, and we added to it.
So what about transport?
I think transport may have been dealt with, Shannon, way up in step 1, which is like taking care of the injured person. This is more, oh, you're talking about transport for who? Transport for the investigators?
Yeah, for the investigator to move around the area.
Right, okay, yes,
rapidly.
okay, yes, right? I wonder if NEBOSH should have given that correct, but I'm not, I mean, I think it is a resource. Let's say the company that you're going to investigate is your company, right? Which is why you're doing this anyway, right? But let's say it's another branch now. So another branch is in Toko, right? Another branch is in, Valencia or something. So you want to get, so yes, Shannon, I'll give you that. They're correct. So transport, you may want to define it and say that transport if there is another branch, because I guess I have to say it now. I guess Massey is like that Massey had many branches. So I mean, I just like Massey stores anyway, which was high-low back then. If you want to get an assessment done and you want in St. James or whatever, yeah, so transport could be also a resource that you want to look at. Anybody else have one? So that's more than 6, but at least I'm glad I get you thinking anyway. Another resource for the actual investigation. If you look at these points, like these were like you're on the scene. These were like you're there, you're on the scene. Imagine if you didn't have these things, right? I mean, for those of us who would have done it, if you're on the scene, right? You're on the scene, you reach, right? You reach, as they would say, and you're looking for your pen and paper, you have no pen and paper. You're looking for your form, you have no form, right? It has be really I guess you look very, unprofessional, and at the same time, by the time you go back to the printer to print a form, the witnesses may have changed their mind, right? Somebody may have passed in the company and said, "Don't talk to the safety now, right? Let's keep it," because we already know the man was at fault, right? And that happens a lot. So see, we see the importance of those things like the notepad, the pen. It's simple. Even you want to mention, from my experience, like the camera too. No, I didn't mention camera, but I know when we say camera today, a lot of people think camera is the cell phones, but I am talking about a separate camera here, right? For some companies, as you know, cell phones are not allowed during working hours then, right? So when I have camera there, please know that I'm talking about a separate unit camera. And I can imagine if you pull that, for those of us who remember what those cameras look like, right? Those cameras work with batteries. So again, imagine you get down there on the scene ready to take your pictures. Camera can't come on because the batteries are dead, right? So it's 9:45. If I could close this there, I would tell you that because you all are all, into it and young anyway, a really nice thing to have if you are safety and, I mean, investigating accidents, it's part of your portfolio anyway. A nice thing to have is, for want of a better phrase here, a suitcase, a briefcase, right? I'm not saying this one, of course, but a nice thing to have. And I normally prefer the hard briefcase, like what some people use for luggage, right? That's what they normally advise. They actually create what is called an accident kit. And the reason for that is that if you are working, remember, if your job is a safety, you could be in a meeting, you could be, I guess, in your office, you could be in the yard somewhere, and then the call comes in. Look, Frank has gotten into an accident, right? What would you do? And like I said, if you have not have had these resources in one place, you'll find yourself now leaving the meeting, scampering, looking for camera, looking for tape, looking for notepad, looking for, well, where did I put my safety glasses? You know, where did I put the caution tape, right? So everywhere that we do this training, once students come out of here anyway, we let the companies know that you need to invest in a briefcase, a hard briefcase, right? A hard kind of cover briefcase. So in your brief, you have all of this. You have sufficient batteries for the camera. You have sufficient tape. The tape is not too short. You have caution tape. You have a notepad. You have pen. You have paper. You have your safety glasses there if you don't wear it all the time. Maybe you have your fluorescent vest there if you don't wear it all the time. You have in there your Ziploc bag. You have your tweezers. You have your cotton. You even could have a voice recorder, right? Time wouldn't permit me to tell you all the things that I have done, right, in terms of accident investigation, right? A voice recorder is actually something very important, right? If you're doing an accident investigation. So you can probably add that one to the list of resources anyway, but hopefully you get it a bit. I'll have to cut this one here short. Again, I probably mentioned that what NEBOSH did was create a separate course out of this known as incident investigation. We offered it just about last month, and I know I had a couple of students that came and did it from this very class right here. And then I think some did it from before. Come to think of it, I had some students from this class like Samuel and I guess Janet could help me remember the last name, but I know I had some students who did it before and they passed it, right? They got 100 in it. I mean, it is project-based, kind of like your NG2, right? So if you want another separate certificate, I suppose once you'll have finished with this, the COVID-19 though is not affecting that course because it's project-based. So, you know, that course is full up and running, right? So I'll try to close off now. Let me just cut the recording there. And I guess in the 1 or 2 minutes in the background, don't want to create too much of a still.